Hello everybody, this is Bird Brain. We're here, we are nerdy for the birdies. This time next week, the Eagles will be wrapping up the 2026 NFL Draft. So, as we move into the final days of the draft season, I want to take a look at the Eagles roster, what they did in free agency and, reserve signings and trades, and look at the players that they've had at each position and kind of predict how they'll use each position group in the draft, how they'll kind of attack it, will they attack it, depending on the group. So I have every name that is on the Eagles on depth chart, so we'll go position by position. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with the quarterback position that totally has not been talked about in any way, shape, or form this offseason. You got Jalen Hurts, Tanner McKee, and they brought in Andy Dalton in a trade for a future 7th round pick. I don't expect too much out of this position group in the draft. This is very easily could be the group that goes into the season. Maybe Tanner McKee gets traded, who knows? Maybe the Eagles will add a day 3 quarterback. I think that's pretty likely. They like doing that. They like bringing in a developmental quarterback. If at bare minimum for reps, for training camp, for preseason, they like having a third stringer, developmental third stringer, fourth stringer type, a Kyle McCord type of quarterback. I mean, Tanner was that quarterback a few years ago, and then they realized, oh, Tanner's actually a lot better than we think. So we'll see what they do with the quarterback position. Moving on to running back, and I feel pretty similar about this position. I have Saquon Barkley, Tank Bigsby, Will Shipley, Dameon Pierce, and Carson Steele as the Eagles running backs as of right now. Now I do have Carson Steele starred, and I'll talk about why in a moment with the next position group, and I could see the Eagles adding a running back here. Something to think about. Tank Bigsby and Dameon Pierce are only under contract one more season. We haven't seen a ton out of Will Shipley, the former 4th rounder a couple of years ago, so maybe if the Eagles want to improve on special teams or receiving for the running back position, I could see them doing that, but I don't think they'll attack this position any earlier than day 3. So you're wondering why Carson Steele is starred. Is because I'm creating a temporary fullback position here, and I have 3 names listed here of different positions on the chart. So you got Cameron Latu, who is technically a tight end for the Eagles, but he played fullback for them last year. You have Carson Steele and Willie Lampkin, the offensive lineman the Eagles picked up at the end of training camp off of waivers from the Rams. And the reason why I have these 3 listed here is this is just a little personal theory of mine, that I think there could be a little bit of competition for a fullback this offseason. I wouldn't be shocked if the Eagles just straight up add one in the draft, but they kind of have 3 fullback-y types. You've got Cam Latu, who's more or less been a blocking tight end in his NFL career, but he straight up became a fullback for this offense last year. Carson Steele, when he was with the Chiefs, kind of played that fullback role for them before they let him loose. And Willie Lampkin is an offensive lineman, but he's an undersized offensive lineman, but he's actually got pretty solid protection skills. And I wonder, could the Eagles use him in 6 offensive lineman sets? And even more to the point, could he be a candidate to become a fullback type player? This is mostly just big brain thinking here, so this is not from any reporting. This is just a personal thought that I've had, so that's why these guys I've starred as the potential fullbacks of this roster. Moving on to wide receiver. You've got A.J. Brown, who I did star because, let's be honest, it's not a guarantee he's here, but as of right now he is. You got Devontae Smith, Dontavian Wicks, who the Eagles just traded for, did a video about that. Hollywood Brown, Darius Cooper, Elijah Moore, who they signed recently, I didn't talk about that signing. Johnny Wilson, Britton Covey, Danny Gray, and Quez Watkins. Especially with the uncertainty of AJ's future, I would be very surprised if the draft ends and the Eagles don't add a wide receiver at any point. And I think they could take a wide receiver at really any point in this draft. They've talked to guys that can go in the 1st round. They've talked to guys that can go the 7th round. I would be very surprised if they leave the draft without adding anyone at this position, especially just given, A.J. Brown is only here. I mean, who knows if he's going to be here just over a month from now. Dontavian Wicks they gave an extension to, but it's only going to be about 2 years. Hollywood Brown is a 1-year deal. Elijah Moore is a 1-year deal. We haven't seen much out of Johnny Wilson and Darius Cooper. Britton Covey's never really contributed much to offense. And I'm not sure if Danny Gray or Quez Watkins really have much of a shot of making this team. So I do think that the wide receiver depth, while it is solid, I could see them adding one more or even two more guys in the draft that will be part of future Eagles offenses. Moving on to the tight end position, which has seen a bit of change in the offseason. So they brought back Dallas Goedert and Grant Calcaterra. They signed Johnny Munt and Stone Smart, and they also have E.J. Jenkins and Jaheim Bell, who was a reserve signing. He was on and off the practice squad last year. And they also have Cameron Latu, who is technically a tight end, but as we discussed earlier, I'm putting him at fullback as well. So I think the Eagles are going to add a tight end in this class, and again, this could be at any point. They could go with Kenyon Sadiq in the first round. They could go with guys throughout the second and third days of the draft, and mainly just because of the fact that, again, we kind of have the same problem we had last year with the tight end room, which is none of these guys are under contract beyond this year. You know, at least the guys that I expect to have impact on the roster. And because of that, you know, you're going to have to figure out replacements, and it's like, are you going to, like, gut the entire room in a single offseason, or are they going to slowly rebuild it over a couple years? So I could see them kind of starting that process this year, attacking it potentially early. I think especially day 3 will have some really good tight end depth options that I could see them adding to fill it out, where you still have Goddard as your main guy, and maybe you don't find the Goddard replacement this year, but maybe you find the Calcaterra replacement, or other tight end replacements. Alright, offensive line. We've got Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Tyler Steen, and Lane Johnson as your likely starters for the season. For depth, Fred Johnson, Miles Hinton, Cameron Williams, Drew Kendall, Holland Pierce, Willie Lampkin, Jake Majors, and John, I cannot say that last name, Ojukwu is my guess on how to say that. I apologize for not saying that correctly. One thing I will say about this offensive line, really, really young depth. I mean, most of these guys were drafted within the last year or so, either by the Eagles or were picked up as, you know, free agents from other teams that were young draft picks. So I still think the Eagles are going to add to the offensive line. Just a lot of unknown potential with the backup depth, with the exception of Fred Johnson. Not a lot of pure guard depth if I'm just looking at the team right now. Landon's future is not clear. Tyler Steen is a free agent in a year. Lane Johnson could retire very soon. And we're not even entirely sure how healthy Cam Jurgens will be going forward. So there's a lot of uncertainty with the offensive line starters as of right now. And the backups, they're really inexperienced. So I think this could be a position the Eagles add to pretty frequently in the draft. I expect them to probably take, you know, a tackle and a guard. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was early, even if it was their first 2 picks. So I think that is the way they'll look at offensive line. And we move to defense with the defensive tackle room. You've got Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Moro Ojomo, Byron Young, Ty Robinson, Gabe Hall. I put Taquan Graham here as a defensive tackle. He's more of like a defensive end type, but he's a little more different than the edge rushers we had, so I just put him in DT. But it still stands to, I still think it doesn't really particularly matter that much. Anyway, to me, I wouldn't be shocked if the Eagles do add to this room. And I think it could be something like a late day 2, early day 3 type move. I look at, obviously, Jordan Davis got extended. We think Jalen Carter is going to be extended. I feel pretty confident about that. Moro Ojomo is going to be a free agent in a year. Byron Young is going to be a free agent in a year. Ty Robinson, you know, we haven't seen a ton out of him yet, the 4th round pick from last year. So I could see the Eagles, they love doing this, especially a defensive tackle, taking guys a year or 2 early, having them kind of just marinate behind the scenes as like the backup defensive lineman, and then they burst onto the scenes when they get their chance. They did it with Milton Williams. You know, the first few years of his career, he wasn't a starter, and then, you know, 2024, he breaks out, has a really good season, has a great playoff run in the Super Bowl. He goes to the Patriots. He's one of the best defensive tackles in the league now. You've got Moro, who's been sitting behind, you know, other defensive tackles, and then he gets his breakout season this year. He played really well. could see him having a similar Milton Williams career type projection. I think they're definitely going to add at this position. It's not the greatest defensive tackle class, but I think with especially the opinions of some of the defensive tackles falling, I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles are able to scoop somebody else that falls down the board and be able to put them on the roster. Moving on to edge. The Eagles have Nolan Smith Jr., Jalix Hunt, Arnold Ebiketie, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who they added recently as a signee, I just haven't talked about him, and Jose Ramirez. And I think this is the weakest room by far in this group, and I have kind of conflicting feelings about it. I've said in my mock drafts, I'm not the biggest fan of this edge class. It's not bad per se. There just isn't a lot of those true alpha edges in this class. Even the top guys aren't like the most alpha edges that you can find in a draft. And finding a Jalen Phillips replacement, I don't think you're going to find that outright replacement in the draft. I think you can find guys that are similar to Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt, talent-wise, but I don't know if you're going to find that top edge. I wouldn't be shocked if the Eagles use draft picks to trade for somebody, either Jonathan Grenard or Josh Sweat. I still think they will take an edge in this class. I've heard people mention first round. I don't love the value of edge at our spot in the first round, just because really after you get through the top three, there's kind of a gap, and at that point it's just kind of pick your flavor and how much you like certain players. Yeah, so I definitely think the Eagles will add to this position. It's just a little interesting to see how and when with this draft class. Then you go to linebacker. You have Zach Bond, Jahad Campbell, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Smile Mondin, Chance Campbell, and Chandler Martin, who actually got a 2-year contract, which is very interesting. It was the longest tenured contract anyone got this free agency cycle that wasn't already on the Eagles, which is interesting. But the Eagles like their depth. Wouldn't be surprised if they added someone in the draft, but Chance Campbell is one of those guys I've got my eye on, because he was someone that, joined the Eagles roster late in the summer. I think he played in one preseason game. And the fact that he stuck around being such a late summer add-on, because usually when guys get added on late in the rosters as a signee before like the final preseason game, you're mostly just there for depth and you're going to get cut the next day. The fact that he survived that and was on the practice squad for the Eagles the whole year makes me think that they do like him. They see something there with him. So we'll see what happens there. I do think they can add at linebacker. It's probably the position I think that's the least likely they would add anything to. Like, I could see them just taking a day 3 swing on someone that's athletic for special teams purposes or something like that. Yeah. Moving on to corner. You've got Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Reek Woolen, Keely Ringo, Jacorian Bennett, Jonathan Jones, Tariq Castro-Fields, Mac McWilliams, and Ambry Thomas. And looking at this position group purely, it's a really good group overall, but I could see the Eagles adding depth here. And, outside of Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, Reek Woolen's a 1-year deal, and I don't think the Eagles are going to pay him, because I think the plan is you take Tariq Woolen, he'll build his value up, he walks, he signs a big contract in the offseason, and you collect the comp pick for it. Keely's a free agent after the season, Jacorian Bennett's a free agent after the season, Jonathan Jones is on a 1-year deal, and he's an older corner. So there's a lot of questions here about, can the Eagles find CB depth? There's a very good chance that we enter 2026, all those guys are gone, and it's going to be a very empty and different room, and you're going to have to replace them. So I could see the Eagles kind of taking a cornerback to stash that won't get many reps this year. I could see them as early as mid-day 2 taking somebody like that, saying, look, you're going to learn behind Quinyon and Reek Woolen, and then if you play your cards right, you can start next to Quinyon next year and be CB2. So we'll see what the Eagles do there. At safety, the Eagles have Drew Makuba, Marcus Epps, Andre Sam, Michael Carter II, JT Gray, and Brandon Johnson. And this is the group that I think a lot of people have been very concerned about. Safety's pretty strong in this class. You can get good safeties into day 3, in my opinion. So I think the Eagles will take advantage of it. I know people want safety first pick. To me, I don't think you have to force the issue in the first round if the board isn't there, but I do think that you can find good talent throughout. I definitely think they're going to add someone. just because there's a lot of uncertainty with this position. Like, Drew Makuba's still pretty young and hasn't played very long for the Eagles because he missed about roughly the last third of his rookie season. Marcus Epps is solid. Andre Sam has flashed when he's had opportunities in preseason. Michael Carter, there's been rumors about him moving to safety, but we don't know for sure. But it sounds like that might be the plan for him. JT Gray, I see as purely a special teamer, and then Brandon Johnson flashed last summer, so we'll see if he can make the roster there. At special teams, you got Jake Elliott and Braden Mann. Very obviously, the Eagles need a long snapper. I think they'll just sign someone probably as a UDFA after the draft for dirt cheap. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Eagles sign a kicker. I mean, look, Jake Elliott's last few seasons have not gone pretty well. And I think there's been some question about how good is he still? Does he have it left in him? We've seen, I don't scout kickers, but from what I've seen, there's some pretty solid kickers in this draft class that probably aren't going to get drafted. You can snag one as the UDFA. They just have him compete. Even if Elliott wins the competition, it's like, let's just see how he hangs with some of these young upcoming kickers. And if this young up-and-coming kicker is better, I think he got to move on, because it was a problem last year. So those are my thoughts on the Eagles depth chart and how it stands with the draft coming up. As you guys know, I'll do my final mock draft on Monday coming up. On Wednesday, the night before the draft, I'm going to do a full first round mock draft of every NFL team. And then it'll be draft time. We'll do the shorts again where I react to every draft pick live. Anyways, this has been Bird Brain. Hope you guys enjoyed being nerdy today. Fly, Eagles, fly. See you around.